Welcome to Boxing During Dinner. Armando Alvarez, David Barry, and Victor Bermudez. If you see David, you know that he's cheering right now and he's all happy is because his kid just had a meltdown a little bit ago. How old is he now? 2 months old.
He's two months and a couple of weeks, so I guess 10 weeks at this point. So yeah.
And I feel like the expert now, right? Because I have a 4 year old who started pre-kinder four, yet I'm nothing I pale in comparison to Victor, who has three kids.
the
Uh,
the
but
the,
Vic,
the
I was
grizzly
telling
vet.
before you jumped on, I was telling David, how sleeping patterns change and everything. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. You know how many times my boxing viewing has been interrupted by my kid. So you just need to adapt.
Yep, I've
Everything
already
changes,
watched
man.
a bunch of Sunday morning fights.
Exactly. I remember when he used to have those meltdowns, when he was like 2 3 months old. There was sometimes that at those fights I'd be up at 4 in the morning, trying to get him back to sleep, and I'd be catching the fight, but
Yep.
nothing like watching box.
David, if he has another meltdown, just put on the Rigondeaux fight from last week. It'll put him right out, bro. It put me right out last week, bro.
It'll be out
Man,
oh man, that's good transitional
I,
material, if you will.
I know we're gonna talk about the Manny Pacquiao fight against Jordanis Ugas this Saturday in a few days. But really quickly, man, that fight was something else. And look, I saw the people arguing on Twitter about it. The people, oh, but Rigondeaux's doing something great, and vice versa, whatever. Sure, the way he moved for being 41 or whatever he is, 42 or 52 or 60 or however old he really is, it is incredible, right? But that's why I've never liked the style. It's hit and not get hit, right? It's not just not get hit and do nothing, which is basically what he did again. Not that Casimero did anything. I mean, that fight, it plain sucked. But people were like invoking Pernell Whitaker's name. Why? Like, leave that man's name out of your mouth while Rigondeaux is fighting. Because I sent some punch stats to David Victor. Um, Whitaker against Chavez landed over 300 punches, and against De La Hoya landed over 200 and something. Has combined those two, that's 500 punches landed. Has Rigondeaux landed that many punches in his whole career?
Nah, man.
Combined, 91 punches combined between Casimero and Rigondeaux over 12 rounds. 91.
Yeah,
That
both
that was
deserve
embarrassing.
blame, but it's Rigondeaux who you've seen do this time and time again. We've mentioned it on this program numerous times. Armando, myself, Cuban American, David, honorary Cuban. I never want to watch him again. And this is a
Me
man
neither.
that we run into in Miami numerous times. Have a working relationship with him. Have done numerous interviews. I'm done. I thought I was done after Lomachenko and what he did there.
Oh
I
yeah.
am totally done now. Like, no, man. Like, that's it.
But dude, it's like my biggest thing is that he's so much better than that.
Yeah, that's the
That
frustrating part. That he can do what he did against Nonito Donaire and what he's done against others. And if he wants to get into a slugfest, he could and probably come
he
out
hits
on
hard.
top.
Yep.
And yet you decide to run around and not throw, because I love the defensive style of fighting.
Me too.
You've mentioned it: Purnell, Roy Jones, Floyd Mayweather. That's what I grew up on. But those guys were offensive fighters as well, especially Roy Jones. What I saw from Ringo Dow, dude, you don't want to be in this game. You don't, and that's what you showed. And then and look, Casimero too. He deserves some blame too. Like, I think he's overhyped. He's clearly
Yeah.
just a puncher. You're not a boxer. You don't know how to cut off the ring. You don't know how to deal with such tactics from what Rigondeaux was showing. So you're a one-dimensional fighter. You're a knockout artist. That's it. You've been exposed as well as Rigondeaux has. So, man, it was just a bad night for Showtime, for boxing, for the Cuban style. I feel bad for
Well,
Ugas.
well, maybe not for boxing because David, I was gonna say to me the toughest part was watching that fight after watching Vergil Ortiz against Mean Machine, because that was a badass fight.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I appreciate that we've already said as much as anyone wants to say about Rigondeaux at this point. We can move on from him. You and I were texting during the Mean Machine and Vergil Ortiz fight. Man, the second round was
Dude,
spectacular.
so good.
And Vergil Ortiz was legitimately hurt. I also believe he was quasi-legitimately dropped. Put it this way, a punch dropped him, even though I think it was on the back of the head. In doing so, nevertheless, Vergil Ortiz was hurt, and then had the gusto to kind of clamp down and fight fire with fire with Mean Machine, and end up putting him in trouble just in that second round. Yeah, I mean, you get 30 seconds out of that round, you got more action than you got in all of Rigondeaux versus Casimiro. Sorry, that'll be the last time I mention
it. No more.
What I love about both of these guys, and look, this is not a criticism of Mean Machine, but he's a front runner. He's a bully, but when you punch back, you've seen the script on him a couple of times now. But excuse me, very talented fighter. But when you look at Vergil Ortiz, have a more refined version of that, somebody with a deeper gas tank. What's great about Vergil Ortiz is you know exactly what you have with him. Sorry.
Drink some water, dude.
I love Vergil. Love Vergil.
But what's great about Vergil, is 100%. He's lovable for all the right reasons. He's a guy who doesn't really care to be a star. You look at him on Twitter, and he's just a dude tweeting hilarious things that are just kind of
he's awesome.
Like the rest.
He's the best, man.
Never wants to turn down a challenge. Always gives you exactly what you would hope for in a ring. Vergil Ortiz, I don't want to say is one-dimensional, but he's not. We'll put it this way: he's an easy fighter to figure out. However, he's very responsible on defense. He has great power. He showed that he can box a little bit and slow down and change the pace of a fight, even though he eventually gets the knockout anyway, 18 times in a row. So I think he showed some wrinkles, and weirdly enough, he reminds me of a Mexican style, not to make a generalization, of Earl Spence almost. The execution is different. I'm not trying to compare the two guys, but they are simple to understand fighters who are patient boxers when they need to be and brutal punchers when they need to be. And as simple as that and straightforward as that style is, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people who can figure them out. And the only person right now in the welterweight division that I would pick over Vergil Ortiz, and this might, you guys might laugh at this because he doesn't even have a title belt. It's Jaron Ennis. Outside of that, I don't know that I would pick Vergil Ortiz or Bud Crawford over Vergil Ortiz heads up, and I don't know if I would pick Earl Spence over Vergil Ortiz heads up either. I think that he should be the underdog in each of those fights, and justifiably so. But I don't know that by the time that last bell tolls that he's lost that fight. The only one I would pick against him with a degree of certainty right now is Jaron Ennis.
Well, a couple things about Vergil Ortiz. Inside those wrinkles, and David. I mean, I'm not gonna go out and pick him against Bud Crawford just yet. But I think he's ready. I think he's ready for the title shot, because from here, where do we go? He beat a guy that Bud Crawford also disposed of. He beat a guy who also nailed and kind of hurt Bud Crawford at some point. He's beaten everybody that's in front of him. He showed that he has the guts and he has the skill to come back from a second round, right? Where he got hurt, to come back poised. He didn't go crazy. He wasn't throwing crazy. He kind of set, and he started trading with Mean Machine, but it wasn't like almost getting him. It wasn't like if he was putting himself in even more danger. He might have, but he did it very responsibly. I think Victor. I think we saw him grow leaps and bounds in this fight. And again, I'm not here to pick him against these guys just yet. But David makes a good argument, man. Like this kid is legit, and I think he's ready. I think he's ready for the big boys at 147.
I was nodding my head and my eyebrows perked up when David mentioned that, because I wasn't expecting it. So I thought I had everything in the bag to just shock you guys. And then there comes David, and I was like, oh, wow, I actually agree with David. I'm ready to put him, just because of what Bud and Errol have done. I give them the benefit of the doubt because their resume, it values that to put them at 1-2. But I think Vergil Ortiz is at least the third best welterweight in the world right now. I think Vergil Ortiz steps in the ring with either one of those guys and knocks their heads off. I'm ready. I've been a believer in Vergil Ortiz for a long time. I've gotten to see him up close and personal on a few occasions. I am just, and then to think the family he comes from, the pedigree, the atmosphere that he deals with on a day in and day out basis. No knock against Bud and what he does in Omaha. No knock against Errol Spencer and what he's got going on in Dallas and in Texas. I will go to war with Vergil Ortiz's team. The fact that he's got Mikey Garcia around him, the fact that he's got Robert Garcia and that Garcia stable around him at all times.
That whole Garcia family.
Yeah, man. Like, I am a believer. And on top of that, I think he's the best Golden Boy fighter that's out there. And you all know how much I love Ryan Garcia. I am the biggest advocate for Ryan Garcia since day one, since the kid was 15 years old. Vergil Ortiz, a few years ago, Oscar De La Hoya said, this is the best prospect we have. This is the best fighter we have. Ryan Garcia got upset. They signed him to a multi-fight deal. But getting back to Vergil to me is more than ready for the top welterweight. I think he runs through Thurman, runs through Garcia if he wants to stay at welterweight instead of moving up to 154. I don't see anyone. I think he destroys, puts Pacquiao into retirement. Ugas drops him. I can't say enough about the guy. I am fully convinced that he is one of the top welterweights. The only reason why I would give Bud and Errol Spence Jr. the notch over him is just because of pure resume and what they've accomplished. Not to disrespect them if I haven't already done so, but Vergil Ortiz, man, by far, I am sold. This is the future of that welterweight division, and who knows where he can go.
No, and I'm loving that 147-pound division. I mean, this weekend, like we mentioned, Ugas against Pacquiao. Notice I mentioned Ugas first over Pacquiao, right? Because we're all Cubans here, honorary Cuban, David. But yeah, I mean, who would have thought, like, we'd get like these two fights like back to back. We got Vergil Ortiz in this great fight. I think we're gonna see an excellent fight this Saturday. This unification fight for WBA and WBA 147 belts. How weird did that look that both of them had a WBA? How weird and stupid did that look that they both had WBA titles?
Yeah, more stupid than weird.
Each other.
Like, come on. Like, I saw the video today and my head like blew up. I'm like, this looks ridiculous. Like if I'm Roberto Mendoza, I'm just like, going into hiding after these last few weeks. Yeah. But yeah, to me, this is a very interesting fight this week, right? That's first and foremost. Let me just go out. You guys are making bold predictions, right? Yordenis Ugas is going to win this fight. Yordenis Ugas is an excellent fighter. He's tall. He has long arms. He knows how to use his boxing skill. He's a guy that fights with a chip on his shoulder. I know I mentioned this last week that, he does and says all the right things, and that doesn't mean much, right, when you're in the ring. But he's right now, I think he's focused. His mind is on Manny Pacquiao. His mind is on becoming a world champion. It has been for quite a bit. He has, to me, one of the best trainers in boxing, and to me, the best Cuban trainer in boxing in recent memory, Ismael Salas. Yordenis Ugas is ready for this fight. Manny Pacquiao is one of my favorites of all time. I mean, the guy, I don't need to say it. He's top 10. Accomplishment wise, he's top 10 of all time, maybe even higher. I mean, the guy's done something ridiculous. If I were to tell you a guy that debuted at strawweight, junior flyweight would one day blind a 154 pounder Antonio Margarito, you would have laughed me like you would have like
4 decades ago.
Yeah, that's insane. So Manny Pacquiao is, we don't need to, he's the Apollo Creed, right? He needs no introduction. He's the master of disaster, the Count of Monte Fisto, and so on and so on, right? But Yordenis Ugas is focused. Manny Pacquiao is fighting right now for the presidency of the Philippines at some point. He's positioning himself. He's in arguments politically with Duterte. It doesn't mean that he's not training. It doesn't mean that him and Boo Boy aren't, working their ass off, but he is 42. He has probably seen his better days. He was in there in a tough fight with Thurman. He won, right? Thurman almost lost to Josecito Lopez the fight before. So how big was that win really? Again, I'm not trying to knock Pacquiao. I'm just trying to play a little devil's advocate, but make my case that Yordenis Ugas will win this fight by decision. It'll be close, but I think he's going to win.
Who's going to retort first?
Go ahead, David. Go ahead, my man.
I like Yordenis Ugas, and I think it's spectacular that we've had a chance to reminisce about the fact that one of his earlier videoed interviews was in Alex Sanchez's living room, our video editor, 9 years ago at a small one-bedroom apartment in Kendall, of all places. So I'm a huge fan of what, especially as a guy who like lost 4 times in his career, or 3 times really, before losing to Sean Porter, like around lightweight against guys he realistically should have beat. All of a sudden ends up moving up to weight classes, probably much better for him, and starts really beating credible guys, like taking their O's away on short notice, like Brian Perella, who just looked fantastic in a fight at junior middleweight against a former world champion and Tony Harrison. I'm just like connecting dots for you a little bit. But Dennis Ugas is all those things. But I don't think that he, even at 42 years old on the other side of the ring, is at the level of Manny Pacquiao. I do agree that at a fundamental level, the way you should score and count a fight, that this is going to be nip and tuck. But 2 things are working against Ugas. Number 1, he's not Manny Pacquiao. Number 2, the fighting styles that both of the guys deliver are in contrast. Whereas Yordenis Ugas, I don't think gets a lot of credit for the things that he does in an efficient fight. I think he beat Sean Porter. I don't think he got credit for it. And on the flip side, you have an opponent in Manny Pacquiao who lands exciting action, packed types of shots and combinations that dazzle, and especially his foot movement. It always looks like whatever he's doing is light years ahead of what his opponent's doing. Those 2 things in contrast, I think, are going to work against him. I think Pacquiao will probably earn a legitimate decision with some questionable rounds, but my guess is the scorecards are going to show Pacquiao by 2 or 3 rounds on each side. And I think it'll be some good exchanges in the meantime, because Ugas is no pushover. He will not deliver a Rigondeaux type of fight. And in that vein, fight fans have a lot to look forward to, even if this isn't the guy they wanted in the first place.
Look, I totally understand where David's coming from, because prior to this week, I said, yeah, wow, this is just a bad fight for Ugas. Manny Pacquiao is going to win this fight. The odds show that. He went from an underdog against Errol Spence Jr. to immediately a favorite against Ugas. I do think it's going to be an entertaining fight. I do think they're going to give fight fans what we want to see. I think they will stand there and trade. Pacquiao has done that. Ugas has proven that he's not shy about trading blow for blow with guys. But I do think that the fact that you haven't fought in 2 years, the fact that you're over the age of 40 at this point, I think all that starts to catch up. We saw it with Juan Manuel Marquez and that brutal knockout. The fact that he stayed on the ground for so long. Manny Pacquiao has lost a lot more than we would like to admit. And I think we're hanging on to what was Manny Pacquiao. I don't think he's been that guy for a long time. I'm not sure why he hasn't been that guy for a long time. I don't want to go making any allegations. But Mayweather and Oscar De La Hoya were onto something, in my opinion. It's why the knockouts have stopped all of a sudden when he was just running through everyone. Then he ends up getting brutally knocked out by Juan Manuel Marquez, as I mentioned. I think the fact that been off for a while, for 2 years, I think the fact that Ugas is coming in hungry, wanting this fight. Look, I can say all the things I want about Ugas, but the fact is, I think he's done. I think it's time. And the only one that has escaped that is Tom Brady. And you don't get to do that when you're in there and not being protected by 10 other men. This is it. It's a great career, but I think it's done. I think it ends here, and it was going to end with Errol Spence. And then I said, okay, well, Ugas, yeah, like I'm back on the Pacquiao side. But as things have gone on throughout the weeks, speaking to Ugas last week, getting the opportunity to speak to him again tomorrow, I like your Yordenis Ugas. And in large part is because I am Cuban American. I'll admit that. But I do think Pacquiao's better days are behind him. And I do think he suffers a loss to Ugas. And that's the last we've seen of Manny Pacquiao, and he will go on to be a senator or maybe even run for president.
I'm pushing back. I'm going to use some fact here. All right. This is good for business, I'm told, because we always agree too much, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna read to you since the Juan Manuel Marquez fight, because that's stuck in people's minds because of how visceral it is. And also call out that was 9 years ago. Let me walk to you through who Manny Pacquiao has fought and beat since then. Brandon Rios, Timothy Bradley, Chris Algieri, legitimate loss to Floyd Mayweather, beats Tim Bradley again, beats Jesse Vargas for a world title, loses a very, very debatable decision to Jeff Horn, knocks out Lucas Matisse, beats Adrian Broner, beats an undefeated two-belt, I believe at the time, champion in Keith Thurman. Manny Pacquiao is not slipping.
None of those names have impressed me. Not one. I was in the Lucas Matisse camp, and I saw him getting tagged up in sparring. I knew he was losing that fight. Timothy Bradley, fine. Timothy Bradley, I've never been a big fan of. Chris Algieri, please. Jeff Horn, please. Brandon Rios, are we really bringing up Brandon Rios 9 years ago? Sure. What you faced between those 9 years, garbage.
Let's talk about resumes in and around, and I'm just talking.
There's no better resume in the sport of boxing than Manny Pacquiao.
Fair, no.
At least active.
Correct, and I agree. Over the length of his career, I'm talking in those 9 years. Is there anyone else that Ugas or even to an extent, maybe Bud Crawford? Bud Crawford's resume isn't that good over the same time frame. No,
but we've been on Bud Crawford for the simple fact that he doesn't fight guys.
My point remains, man. And I agree in objectivity that Pacquiao is 42 years old and in a weight class where he has no business fighting at the world level that he currently is, in a sport that is notoriously unforgiving to the aging as well in those weight classes. I concede those things. But I think when you remove that, and I do think we have a Tom Brady situation here, there's no one else in and around the weight class, even as a part-time fighter, who's fighting the type of opposition. And I agree, I'm not saying it's great opposition, but I also know that no one's fighting great opposition. Manny Pacquiao has fought comparably good opposition to anyone else in that weight class. And I think he's still got...
Manny fights everybody. He fights everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Look, but see, to continue this festivity of disagreement, right, between you guys, I think you're both wrong. I think Vergil Ortiz shows up in round 7 and knocks both of them out.
He probably could. No,
man. Or third round, Errol Spence shows up, removes the eye patch, no injury, knocks them both out. A little Vince McMahon action here, or AEW. AEW is doing pretty well too. So
Mr. Fuji throws the substance, the white powder into the eyes.
Exactly.
To David's credit, I tend to say what's best for business is the younger guy coming out victorious, because it is pretty much best for business that Ugas defeats Manny Pacquiao and then has so many opportunities ahead of himself with the loaded welterweight division of Vergil, all the guys we've mentioned. But I honestly do think in this case, what's best for business is Manny Pacquiao coming out on top.
Yeah.
Look, and either of the two guys winning, and with this we'll wrap up. I think with either of the two guys winning is a win for the younger fighters, for the Vergil Ortizes, for the Duran Ennis looking for a title shot, because these two guys, David, you mentioned Pacquiao will fight anybody. Victor, you mentioned and I mentioned Yordenis Ugas' focus. He's looking to become the best fighter in the division. They'll fight these guys. Errol Spence, who knows how long he'll be out? He may be out for a long time. He may be out forever. We don't know how he's going to come back from that retinal, detached retina. That's a really bad injury. Bud Crawford, who the hell knows what's going to happen with him? Is he going to fight Sean Porter? Is he not? Is he going to stay with Tom Breck? Is he not? So, winner of this fight Saturday, more than likely, like Victor was, saying, like if it's Ugas, I think it facilitates Duran Ennis getting a title shot, a Vergil Ortiz getting a title shot. Pacquiao may retire, if he becomes president of the Philippines, or if he's in this bitter election. Who knows what will happen. But what I do know is that just even talking about this, is a lot more interesting than that Rigondeaux Casemiro fight. So, and with that, we'll say happy birthday to our the fourth member of the Boxing During Dinner team, Alex Sanchez, who turned 38 today. He says he was just a 20-some-year-old when we
what
started
is that
boxing
he says?
during dinner.
Are you doubting his age? He says he turns 38.
Is he also a Cuban fighter?
Is that another Rigondeaux?
Maybe he's 45. Who knows? No, but Alex has more hair than we ever had or will ever have.
That man's got some good hair, bro.
David has no hair. I'm like thinning back here. Vic, I'm sure you don't have as much hair as.
I'm for sure got a dome going back here.
And Alex Sanchez, the member of the Boxing During Dinner team with the best hair, like bar none, best hair on the planet, Alex Sanchez. But with that, this has been Boxing During Dinner.